I've noticed as I get older, I seem to spend more time waiting. Waiting for the kettle to boil. Waiting for my 11-year-old daughter to finally respond to the question I asked her, what was seemingly hours ago. Waiting for the new season of that TV show that I've been hooked on to finally get aired. And waiting to get my hands on the keys to the very latest electric cars to deliver a verdict to you, dear viewer. Now, it's that last one that is particularly frustrating, because if I've been waiting quite a time to get my hands on an electric car to review and it turns out to be no good, then I feel a little bit cheated. I feel like it's all been a little bit of a waste of time. Now, that happened a few weeks ago. If you're a regular viewer of AutoEV, you'll know that I wasn't particularly enamoured by the Ford Capri, and I'd been waiting quite a while to get my hands on that car, and when it arrived, well, oh dear. And it's the same with this. This is the new Cupra Tavascan. Now, to be fair to Cupra, they have tried their hardest to get me into this car. I couldn't make the UK launch of it, and then the press car that I finally did book has had to be pushed back a couple of times for various different reasons. But now it's finally here. And immediately we have a little bit of a problem, because this car sits on the same platform that underpins the Capri. And we know how I felt about that one. So, how's the Tavascan going to fare? Is it going to be worth the wait, or is it just going to be another waste of time? Time to find out. As I say, welcome to this week's road test review, welcome to the new Cupra Tavascan, and as always, welcome to AutoEV. Now, before I get started on this week's review of Cupra's new Tavascan, it is of course that time when I'm just going to ask you just to make sure that you're subscribed to the AutoEV channel. Go and check now. I'll wait for you. By the way, once you've done that, also press the little bell button that's down below, because then that way you'll be notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. Once you watch the review, if you enjoy it, and hopefully you will, give it a little thumbs up, and don't forget, leave me your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think about the cars we review, such as Cupra's new Tavascan, and of course the AutoEV channel overall. So, if you know your cars and you know your electric cars, then you'll know really what this is. In other words, it's another one of the cars that spun off the MEB platform, and it's another coupe SUV style of car, such as the Volkswagen ID.5, the Škoda Enyaq coupe, the Audi Q4 e-tron Sportback, and of course the Ford Capri, because the Ford Motor Company also have a technical partnership with Volkswagen where they can use the MEB platform for their electric offerings. And the ID.5 and the Capri left me sort of like colder than a wet Wednesday afternoon in Wolfsburg in December. And whilst I do like the Enyaq, I do find the coupe version just a little bit pointless. And whilst I appreciate the Q4 e-tron Sportback, again, I still prefer the normal size Q4 e-tron. But this is Cupra. This is the Volkswagen Group's sporting brand, the one that claims to have that Mediterranean flamboyance. So if anybody should get a sporting coupe SUV right, it should be them, shouldn't it? But as always, let's take a brief look at the main points on the car before we start the review. So the Cupra Tavascan is the brand's second all-electric model after the Born hatchback, and, as discussed, sits on the Volkswagen Group's MEB platform. 4 trim levels are available across 2 models, either the rear-wheel drive 286 PS V trims or the all-wheel drive 340 PS VZ models. Both variants use the 77 kWh battery that can deliver up to 353 miles in a single motor car or up to 320 miles in a dual motor one. All Tavascans are 5-door coupe SUV body styles, and prices start at just over £47,000 and top out at just under £61,000 before options are fitted. Now, as I say, for me it's been a real mixed bag with these cars from the Volkswagen Group, and with Cupra being sort of the last of them to sort of like introduce their version, and also with the company being the newest brand within the umbrella, this is the one that really needs to prove itself. This is the one that has to be good in some respects. So to find out whether or not it is, we're going to put it through the road test that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric vehicle. And that, folks, is the AutoEV one. Now, originally I did plan to have this car alongside the Capri and do a twin test with them, but I'm sort of glad that I didn't for the sake of the Capri, because This is how you make a car look interesting. This is how you make a coupe SUV look good, in my opinion. Okay, not beautiful, I will give you that. Okay, it's not exactly a beautiful looking car, but it's very striking looking, very sporty looking, and that I think is a good thing because it makes it stand out. And of course it adopts Cupra's shark design language at the front, although given the size of this sort of like open area down here, maybe it's a basking shark that they've gone for. Who knows. Triangles are the theme. They do like the triangles, and there's the 3 triangle signature that you get in the light signature over here. Other as well, the Cupra badge on the bonnet here lights up. Oh, well, say it lights up, just the outline of it, it gives it quite an eerie glow at night. I really like that. I think that's quite cool. I think it's quite very distinctive and looks quite premium, I think. The Cupra lettering just down the bottom there, and it's all finished in this copper colour, obviously, because that is sort of Cupra's colours, if you like. And as you see, you've got this sort of like very kind of contrast, almost open mouth area here. Well, it's not open up here, obviously, the cooling's down at the bottom, but it looks very open here. Now, of course, it ties it in with other cars within the Cupra range. Of course, the Born, the new Terramar combustion engine SUV, the Leon and the Fermentor. 2 cars, well, 3 cars that I've actually reviewed over on my other channel, House of Cars, if you're interested in Cupra combustion engine cars. But what I do like about Cupra is they've tied them all in. They make them look part of the same family without making them look like a copy of each other. That I do like. You know, Cupra managed to do that very, very well, and their styling is on point, I would say. As I say, it's not beautiful, but it's very striking. You go into this really heavily sculpted bonnet, and that's another thing that I like as well. And you can't really see it, but there's these little vents here, which obviously take airflow in through there and then channel it up through there. So that helps obviously with efficiency, with better airflow. But it's quite cool as well. I just quite like the look of that bonnet, and as I say, it looks far more interesting than anything else built on this platform, I think, you know, in terms of the coupe SUVs from the rest of the Volkswagen Group brands. So I think we're off to a really good start, and kudos to you, Cupra. You've done well here. Now, as you move around the side, more of that sculpting work is evident. You can see it down there, these heavily sculpted door panels and the contrasting colour down at the bottom, which also goes around the wheel arches as well. So again, really distinctive. And that mirrors opposite on the mirror, if you'll pardon the pun there. This particular colour, by the way, is called Atacama Desert, and it's the only one that's a standard colour, and it's the only one you should buy this car in my opinion. They don't do that gorgeous green colour that they did on that Cupra Born VZ we have, but they do this Atacama Desert. So if you are going to buy a Tavascan and you don't buy it in this colour, then obviously you're certifiably mad, because this is stunning, I think. It's a sort of bronzy pewter colour. It looks great, I think, and really contrasts nicely with this grey finish. Different models, which we'll talk about spec wise. This is a V2, so it's the first rung up the ladder from the lead-in car. The V1 gets 19-inch wheels, but from V2 upwards you get 21s. Don't know what happened to 20s, you go from 19s to 21s. And you're going to need them because the 19s look tiny on this car. And I never thought I'd say that about 19-inch alloy wheels, but there you go. So yeah, there we go there. Flush door handles with a touchpad in there. What I will say is the quality of this car, oh, that is so satisfying. That door close, it feels like you're really shutting a bank vault. It's a real quality product. The build quality on this car is absolutely fantastic, especially on things like that. I really like it. Now, you don't get the Tavascan as a full-size SUV, so it's the only one that's actually designed and engineered as a coupe SUV in that sense. You know, if we just take the Volkswagen cars, forget about the Ford Capri, so in other words, the ID.5, the Q4 e-tron from Audi, and of course the Škoda Enyaq, you don't get a full-size SUV version of Tavascan, it's just the coupe body style. So maybe that's going to help it, yeah? And of course it does flow into this very steeply raked rear screen, which we'll just come on to there. But I do think this is a handsome looking car. I think this is a good looking machine. And you know, if you're a regular viewer, I'm not a big lover of these coupe style SUVs, but this one does turn my head. So, round the rear, steeply raked screen, this lovely little lip spoiler that just flips up here, gives it really distinction, but it's these lights. Look at these lights, this light bar. Cupra do a brilliant rear end in terms of the light signature, and the Cupra badge lights up at night. Now, some people don't like that. I think that's amazing. I really do like that. I do like this whole sort of like the fact you can now have sort of like the badges lit up. Manufacturers are doing it, and I think it looks really cool on this car. But that's my opinion, you know. I mean, I'm not exactly an aesthetic type of guy in some respects, but I like that. I like the rear end of it. There's no rear wiper, that's disappointing, but as I say, I get the whole thing. It's airflow, and it would in some respects, I do get, look a bit incongruous on this car, as it would on some of these other sort of like coupe style SUVs. So I do understand why designers are leaving them off. Of course, you get the big bronze or copper Cupra lettering across the front. There's no badging to tell you whether it's a V1, V2 or VZ on the car. That's it, it just says Cupra, and there's no Tavascan badge on it. That's it. You can see the contrast down at the bottom there, the sort of diffuser area. You get a little reversing camera on this car. We'll talk about specs. Really good specification as standard on the car once you get to the V2 trim level and above. So the V1 is quite the price point where you come in at, but from V2 and above, the standard equipment level is really high. But we will get on to that. I like these little bits as well, this sort of quite muscular rear hip or rear haunch of the car. I think this is a great looking thing, and as I say, I love this colour on it. But it doesn't really matter what I think, does it? As I say, I'm hardly the, you know, the style icon for the modern man. It's important what you think though, because you might be out there buying them. What do you think? Do you prefer this over the ID.5? Do you prefer it over the Q4 e-tron Sportback? Do you prefer it over the new Škoda Enyaq? Because that is quite a good looking car in some respects, especially, you know, I prefer the SUV Enyaq, but a lot of people prefer the coupe. But what do you think? Do you prefer it over the Capri? Because I do. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Right, practicality. Yes, well that's the one thing I will say with all these MEB platformed cars, the sort of SUV ones, they're all very practical and they're all very much of a muchness in some respects. So you've got 540 litres in the boot as standard, which is more than you get from say a Kia EV6, not quite as much as you get from the Škoda Enyaq, so it's middle ground, so good enough I would suggest. If you fold down the standard 60-40 split rear seat, then it takes total capacity up to 1,560 litres from memory, and you get the load through facility as well where the centre armrest is. So again, you've got longer loads like shelving units or fishing rods or whatever. You can still have 2 rear passengers and load through as well, so that's quite good. Okay, there's no storage at the front, irrespective of whether it's a single motor or a dual motor car, but you do get cable storage underneath the floor in fairness, which is quite decent. And actually you could remove that floor as well if you want a taller bit of space in there. But in terms of suitcases, yes, they all do fit as you'd expect, and they'll go in that way. So you get, there's our large one, there's our medium one, and there's our 2 carry-ons which go down in there, and you've got space there for extra rucksacks or softer bags or camera bags or whatever. So a decent amount of storage space in the car for a family. But if you do need more as well, then Cupra also offer sort of like load systems for the roof of the car, you know, so ski racks, bike racks and all the rest of it. But yes, in terms of practicality, although it's a coupe style SUV, more than enough. Right, well again, very similar to what I've had before in terms of these other cars. However, what I will say about this car is my feet don't feel too pushed up. They feel like they're properly down. So I don't know whether the seat is slightly raised up in the Tavascan to some of the other cars. I don't know is the honest answer, but there's plenty of room. That's what I'm trying to say. There's loads of leg space. I can get my feet underneath the driver's seat, and that's my driving position. So it is quite low because I like to sit quite low in the car. V2 upwards, you get this glass panoramic sunroof as standard. It has a blind in it as well, so you know that's the blind open. So there is obviously space for the blind to go in here. So that's just the only bit. As I say, if you're a bit taller than me, I'm 5'8". And you're in the back of the car, you might find like you might have to take your hat off first. If you wear tall top hats in the back of cars, you might have to find you take that off first, otherwise it'll bang against the roof. But otherwise, there's a lot of space back here. There's a flat floor, as you'd expect. There's door bins, which are okay. They'll take a water bottle, not much else, but they will take that. You fold down the armrest, however, you've got 2 cup holders. Remember, as I say, you've also got the load through facility as well, so you do have that. Isofix points, well done Cupra, they're nice and easy to get hold of. They're just the little plastic flaps that flip down and then you jam the seat, the chair into it. This one's got heated rear seats. You've got 2, that's not standard on some of the cars by the way. You've got the 2 USB-C connectivity ports there. Now, a little thing, I had a comment on a video recently where a chap, albeit it was over on House of Cars, did mention this, that he said you need to mention whether or not it does have rear air vents, which is a good point, because if you've got a dog in the back or children, you want to have nice cool air. Yes, there are face vents, but they're down here. Sometimes they're slightly better off being up in the pillars, but you do have the vents in the back as well, okay? So to the gentleman that mentioned that, there you are. There's mat pockets on the backs of the seats, but no other smaller pockets, to pop phones into or stuff, or to put sweeties into and stuff, just those smaller pockets down the bottom there. And coat hook there. So look, there's plenty of space, is what I'm trying to say. There's a decent amount of space here. It's no real different to a lot of the other cars in this class, but as I say, I do feel that I don't feel my legs have been pushed up. There's a bit more of a drop and a bit more of that stadium style seating where you can see good view forward. But a decent amount of room back here, enough bits and pieces, enough storage, and very comfortable rear seats. So yeah, ticks the boxes there. Right, up here. Well look, there are some fundamental issues with the interior of this car, but in fairness to Cupra, they are the same fundamental issues that affect Volkswagen and the Capri that were in the other week. Škoda and Audi maybe not so much in some respects, although Audi are going that way. And that is purely this. There's too many touch sensitive buttons, and I still don't like these rear window switches that you've got to press a button to operate first. So in other words, there's only two window switches, you have to press the rear and then operate the button to do the rear windows. So that's not just Cupra, okay? And I've talked about them enough on the channel, so I'm not going to bleat on about it, okay? I know a lot of people are getting sick of hearing me go on about it. But it's the same thing, the slider controls here, they're better, they're illuminated. I still don't think they're the actual answer to it. So, and as I say, on this steering wheel here, again, a couple of times yesterday, the problem is the steering wheel's a really nice wheel, and it's a really nice thickness of wheel. BMW, take note, this is a nice thickness of wheel. And you hold the wheel like that, like I do, as you're sitting straight on at 8:45, the heel of your hand is over the volume on that side and the buttons on this side for changing displays on there. So as soon as you move it, you brush against it and change that. So that's my only beef with these buttons. It'd be nicer to see actual physical buttons. Okay, that's it. I'm not going to go on any more about that. Right, I want to talk about the design first of all, because this thing is absolutely stunning inside. Look at it. You can't say this is boring. It was really interesting. My 11-year-old got in the car yesterday. I was taking her swimming and she got in the car yesterday. She went, "What's the point of this?" I said, "It's just really for styling the central spine." She went, "Looks quite cool." And she's 11. She's down with the kids, so she knows these things. But it looks like sort of Aquaman suit, this sort of 3D printed kind of, sort of like, I don't know what it is really, this texture finish that's here. And it's also up here in these like scoops in the doors. It looks fabulous. Don't get me wrong, I know there's people go, it doesn't, I don't know, the quality is good. Again, it's built well, but the actual texture of the plastic is quite hard. The actual surface of it feels quite hard. But I do want to talk about the materials as well, but I'll get onto that in a second. But look at the design of this. This looks great. You get your typical, the Volkswagen Group instrument binnacle that isn't attached to the column of the wheel, it's attached to the dashboard. So it just has the very bare minimum stuff in it, as we've seen with all of the other cars. So you get your speedo there, you get your gear shift there, you do get the range and battery percentage there. You can change it a little bit to give you various other little bits and pieces down the side of it. And you can also alter the head-up display as well. It's got a head-up display in this car. So you can also alter the things that you see in that. So if you want the range and the sort of elements of the trip meter, in other words your economy, how you're doing in terms of your miles per kilowatt hour, that can be displayed up there, or you can take it off just to show you the speed. So that's quite cool. I quite like you can configure that as much as you can. The big central infotainment screen here, I've used this quite a lot in Cupras of late. This is getting better. I've said this in all the Volkswagen Group cars we've reviewed lately. Škoda always did it really well, Volkswagen struggled, but they've caught up, and Cupra's somewhere in the middle, I think, between those two. Audi seem to do their own thing, and actually I really like the Audi one. But this is good, nice clear icons, there's colour to them, you can see it. It's dead easy to see, dead easy to operate what you want to do. You've got wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, there's a wireless charging pad down in there, so you can just leave your phone in there, and it's rubber matted, and also it's got sort of like grips down the side as well, so the phone doesn't slide around and then become disconnected. And it actually does charge. Ford, take note, I haven't changed my case. Why does that not charge in a Capri but charges in here? Anyway, there we go. And there's also a little storage bin in there as well, just so you can hide your keys or your wallet in. But this screen itself, I really do like this. Now, obviously everything is controlled through it. So you've got your heated seats, which is standard on the V2 spec upwards. You've got your slider controls for the temperature. As I say, they're still not ideal, but at least they're illuminated, and actually once you do use them, they're all right. And as you can delve into the screen to get more than actually what's giving you here. So if you want a more concise, a more detailed climate control menu, so you can see airflow and direct it and stuff, you can go into there, change your fan speed. And it's quite big, you see what I mean? All the icons are quite big and clear. So yes, you are having to use the screen, but actually it is quite easy to use because the icons are so good. That's one thing that I think they've made a big effort in, and you control the rear from here as well by pressing the rear buttons. The other thing that I really want to mention as well is, again, we saw this recently on some of the other cars. You swipe down and you've got these shortcuts for now disabling your ADAS system. So lane keep assist, speed limit warning there, that's off now. So it's just that one swipe down and press the buttons. That's brilliant. I really like that. You know, that again, kudos to Volkswagen Group for changing that so they are very easy to get to. So just swipe down and there they are. So you don't have to delve through loads of different menus to get them like you do with the Ford. So the screen is good. We can't complain at all. And then if you want to go into change various different things, such as the vehicle on the exterior, you know, such as, you know, comfort lights, the mirrors, in other words, if you want them to fold when they lock and things like that, there's all that settings in there you can go into and adjust that. Okay, I don't need to go on about it. It's good. It's better than it has been. The software's good. It's quite slick. The inbuilt nav system is fairly slick as well. You know, it's good. Everything feels like quite responsive and all the rest of it. But as I say, I get Apple CarPlay and Android Auto working in it. That does me. Right, the materials. Well, actually, this thingy with the design still. See this copper finish here? Is it just me, the way it swoops up at the side there? I mean, I think that looks great. Do you think that's designed to be like the bull of the horn? You know, with it being a Spanish brand? I didn't see anything in the press pack, but that's what it reminded me of, like almost like the horns of the bull, you know, as it goes round at the side there. I thought that was really cool. I like that. But the materials. Okay, so you've got this, Cupra go in for sustainability in a big way. There's lots of talk of sustainability. In fact, there's a little thing on the mat down here. I'm sorry, I'm just going to have to read it because I can't remember the name of it. Econil, contains Econil, which is regenerated nylon in the carpet mats. And it's the same with the seats as well. Now this interior is called Dark Knight, which is, to me, is still the coolest name for an interior of a car. You've got this Dark Knight, which is the blue thing here, with the little copper arrowheads on the seat. But when you're driving, and you're driving like that, yesterday I went quite for a long drive in the car, and I was convinced in my peripheral vision there was crumbs between my legs, and I kept doing this, and it's not. It's just the little arrows pointing towards my groin, like I need to be reminded where that is. Well, I'm 50 now, I suppose I do. Lots of sustainable materials in here, and I love this sort of like dark blue, you know, and it's got real squidgy effect here at the top here. And then it's the same here, you know, this material down here, and it's like neoprene, like wetsuit style material. The only thing is, it does catch all the dust and ooze. So if you're a little bit like me, a bit OCD about the cleanliness of the interior, you might want to keep yourself a little brush in the car, just to, you know, clean those little bits in there. But otherwise, it's a lovely texture to it, a lovely feel to it. This area here, that is this 3D printed material here, it does feel, as I say, it's very solid, but there's no doubt about it, it is a slightly harder plastic. So as long as you don't continually keep touching it, and the same in the doors, you're not really reminded of that. The only thing I will say is, whilst the doors do shut with a beautiful thunk, the handles here, as soon as you touch them, they do feel plasticky. It might have been quite nice if they'd maybe just done those in a metal finish. But I have to say, the actual action of them and then the shut of the door is well built. So that's the only thing, the touch point is just there. I mentioned the steering wheel, it's a really nice size of wheel. You get the two drive mode buttons here, one there and then one to go straight to the Cupra mode, which we'll talk about when we drive it. You've obviously got the transmission stock on your right hand side like you do in most of the Volkswagen Group cars, and then obviously the one on the left hand side is for lights and wipers, so there's a lot of functionality on that one stock that you have to get used to. There's the same silly light, touch sensitive light switch down by your right knee, but if you leave it on auto you're not going to worry too much about that. Storage is fine in terms of you've got door bins, you know, that are shaped for water bottles. I see you've got wireless charger there, a little tray behind that, and this bin in here, which is amazingly deep. I mean, I can get my whole arm in there. So that's a good few packets of pan drops in there, or starbursts. The seat material, as I say, is nice, and then you've got the same, this sort of like neoprene thing down the side of the seat. And then the actual sort of like microfiber, I think they call it, centre section, which holds you really well. Now, if you do want leather, you have to go up to the VZ3. Okay, the V2, this car, and the VZ2 look like this. If you go to the VZ3, they get different seats. It gets the cup seats, not the Seatbelt cups that came in the Born and the other cars, but they are a little bit more aggressive, and they come in leather. So if you want leather, you've got to go up to the VZ3. It's not an option on these cars. Talking of the seats, however, as I say, I did a long journey in the car yesterday, and I found the seats really comfortable. There's just enough lateral support down the side. They're nice and lengthy on the squab for me. There's good support down the side of your thighs. There's electric adjustment on driver and passenger side on this V2 spec upwards. I think as well, did I see massage? No, there isn't a massage function. No, there isn't. No, that's just lumbar. Sorry, I was going to tell you a wee truth there. Untruth, sorry. But the driving position itself is lovely, and you get really nice. The wheel obviously adjusts for reach and rake as well. And as I say, the actual wheel itself feels nice. 2 paddles behind for your brake regen, which we'll talk about when we're out driving it. And as I say, you've got the swipe control for the sunroof. I do like the little copper accent in the middle of the seat as well, in the back below the head restraint. That's quite cool too. So on the whole, a brilliant interior, really brilliant. And again, it's like the outside, really distinctive. I mean, if you think about it, look at it, you've got 2 things, that's it. You've got your driver binnacle and you've got your infotainment screen, and that is it. It's exactly the same as you get in the likes of the Enyaq, the ID4 and the ID5. Yet Cupra have made it look absolutely phenomenal by the way they've styled it. Yes, there is no purpose to this. You know, it might be better with an open cockpit in terms of practicality, but it's all about style, and I love that. You know, it's a bit like the outside. They've really styled it. They've done really, really well, and I love the bits of copper in it. And I say, I'm absolutely convinced that's what they are, the bullhorns. And you know, the vents and all the rest of it, the way they're tucked away, and they're just positioned nicely. It just feels special. It feels different. It feels good. There's just a couple of areas that could do with being better in terms of the quality of the plastics used, but I prefer the talk of the sustainability. It's the only Volkswagen brand, them and Škoda seem to be the only ones that really talk about sustainability in a big way. And they've done it again in here with the materials they used. And I think it's brilliant. I love this interior, and that's good. That's really good to use. I like it. So yeah, to me, brilliant interior. Well done, Cupra. Now, there's only one battery that comes in the Tavascan, and it's the 77 kilowatt hour battery. That's its usable capacity, okay? And in this single motor V2 model, that should give you a WLTP range of around about 339 miles, as I say, according to the test cycles. However, in the real world, bank on that being around about 285, and I'll tell you why. Yesterday, as I say, I did quite a long trip in the car. I live up in Surrey. I went down sort of like through Hampshire and up through West Sussex and stuff. I just went out for a drive. I just took the car out for a drive, and I did over 100 miles in it yesterday. And I was getting a real mixture of roads, so dual carriageway, country roads, slowing down through little villages, but no real town work as such. And I was getting 3.7 miles per kilowatt hour without even trying, okay? And at the moment, we're in single digits temperature I'm filming this in. So I don't think that's too bad. So if I was being a bit more careful in warmer weather, I would suggest this is a 300-mile car. That easily, you know, if you're doing sort of like taking your time, and or as I say, in warmer months. So there you go. That's what you're going to be looking at. Now, charging speeds, 135 kilowatts. Not brilliant. However, in fairness, it says you can still replenish the battery from 10 to 80% in 28 minutes. So bang on class. And I always say, anything under half an hour, I think is absolutely fine. So that's what you get. You do get an onboard 11 kilowatt charger as standard, okay? However, if you want a heat pump, you have to option up the winter pack on the car, and that's part of that. You can't option it just as a standalone option. You've got to buy that winter pack, and that's a £1,335 option, which I do think is a little bit of a downside. But otherwise, pretty decent stuff, I'd say. So I've got a V2 car here. So this is a single motor, rear wheel drive, 286 PS. If you go to the VZ cars, the VZ1, VZ2, that's dual motors, 340 PS. Okay, so there's more power. I'll talk about that in a little second. 0 to 60 in this one is 6.8 seconds. So in fairness, in many ways, it's on a par with what you'd expect this style of car, this size of car, with this level of power to be. However, what I will say is this, the acceleration from it is not what you'd call neck snapping. Now, sorry, I'm just going to turn off these driver aids because I do prefer them off. It's not exactly neck snapping acceleration, and in some respects you do feel maybe a little bit cheated because of that Cupra badge. Maybe you just think, oh, it doesn't feel, you put your foot down and you go, oh, it doesn't feel that quick. And you'd be right in some respects. It doesn't feel blisteringly fast. It feels fast enough. And because of the Cupra badge, you do feel yourself, oh, I feel a bit cheated now. And that was pretty much how I used to feel about the Born when it first came out. It just felt it wasn't quite sharp enough until they brought the VZ out. Now, obviously, as I say, you can have more power in the VZ models. The only downside with that is it also brings more weight. There's another 100 kilos in the front axle, so you do have to be aware of that. And this is the thing, you've just got to remember in some respects that this is a family SUV as well. So whilst I get the Born as a hatchback, they did market it as a hot hatch in some respects. So, you know, you wanted a little bit more from the Born. In this, to expect more maybe is just expecting a little bit too much. I don't know. But here's the thing with this car. The driving modes. Now normally all of these cars have the driving modes, okay? So you go in through this button here. If I go, you go, what is there? There's comfort, there's range, there we go, comfort, performance, and Cupra. 4 modes, okay? Now, when you go for a V2 upwards, you get Cupra's dynamic chassis control as standard, okay? Don't get it in the V1, you get it on the V2 and up, okay? So it sharpens everything up, it sharpens the drive of the car up. Now, most of the time with these modes, when you go into the most aggressive, in this case Cupra, you do it to try it, or you do it to impress your mates or your kids, and then you go, oh, that was fun, and then you leave it be and you never touch it again. Going into the Cupra mode in the Tavascan, however, is actually the best thing you should do, because the trade-off going from the comfort to the Cupra mode is a little bit of a more jiggly ride. Not uncomfortable, it's firmer, it's a bit more planted on the road as well. But the trade-off is you do get that sharper throttle response, you do get that little bit quicker acceleration, and it does, dare I suggest, bring the car more in line with what you expect it to be wearing a Cupra badge. Does that make sense? It's really odd. I found it yesterday. I was driving the car yesterday out in quite a range, and I was going between it all, and actually the trade-off, as I say, with going into the Cupra mode is just that slightly firmer ride over those potholes and ridges. That's it. There's no other reason that you shouldn't be in the Cupra mode. And I've never really had that in any other cars in some respects. You know, you go into the most aggressive mode and say it's all right for a bit, and then you come back out of it and go, oh, I don't want to touch that because the ride's too firm or the throttle's too sharp, whatever. In this, that I think should be the mode that you immediately go into, because it makes the car just that little bit better to drive. It really does. It sharpens everything up and just makes it a much better car. The steering, really good steering, really sharp. Again, going into the Cupra mode just gives it that little bit more weight, that little bit more feedback, so you're not got the vagueness over the dead ahead that you get sometimes in the standard mode. I don't think I'd bother, to be honest with you, with the performance mode. Don't bother with it. Just keep either stick in comfort or Cupra. Don't bother with the range or the performance side of things, okay, because they don't really make much of a difference. But the Cupra one certainly, as I say, just sharpens up the steering that little bit, and it just gives it a little bit more tenacity when you turn in. Bear in mind, as I say, you don't have the front motor, so the front wheels are just doing the steering, so you do feel the sort of like the limits of grip, you do feel sort of like the limits of adhesion a little bit more. There's no power going through the front wheels to corrupt them, so what you're feeling is pure steering, and I say it's a good response you get from it. So turning into a bend just gets the car just slightly sort of like, sort of like set up nicely, and you can really slice through the bend. The only thing I would say on that, however, the only caveat I would give that, if you've carried too much speed into the bend, the car cannot disguise its weight. There's just that little bit, the transition of weight, from sort of like the back of the car as it pitches into the bend. You can just feel the weight shift, and there are times you go, oh, that was a little bit too much. So that's the only thing I might say, is the dual motor car would just give you that little bit more grip at the front to, alleviate that and pull the car through. Otherwise, this is actually a really nice car to string a set of bends together. Considering what this is, that sort of slightly larger coupe SUV, it really works well. And the dynamic chassis control on the car, ooh, I do like that. It just keeps everything in check. It's really good on the car. The only criticism I really have of the driving dynamics is the brakes. The brakes feel really odd. They're not the smoothest things to operate. So if you're coming up, I'm coming up to the usual width restriction now, okay, carrying some speed, it's the speed limit, I'm slowing down for it anyway. You slow down, you go, that's not enough, and then, you push a bit more, and it's almost like there's another step, and as you go through it, it really grabs. It's a really odd sensation, and it's very difficult to brake smoothly in the car when you're coming up to sort of like, a junction or a set of traffic lights, or as I say, a real sort of like stop, or the car in front has stopped. It's very, very difficult to do it smoothly. It's just got this last little step, because you think, oh crikey, I'm not going to stop in time, so you push a bit harder, and it's like the pedal goes through one more step, and it absolutely hauls the car up. But you do also have 2 levels of recuperation with the car. In fact, I think you've got more than that. So you've got standard drive mode, you go into B mode now, okay? And then you've got the paddles behind the steering wheel where you can then adjust the levels of brake regen that you get. That's quite nice. You've got a good level of adjustability in the car. And then it will bring it up. I'm pretty sure it does. Does it bring it up to a halt? No, it just brings it up to a creep, but it's a very low creep. So actually that's very good. And obviously you've got auto hold on the car, so if you stop at the junction you can hold it. So you can sort of like overcome that weird brake pedal feeling by using the regen more, if that makes sense. But if, like me, you just prefer it to be in the standard kind of drive mode, then as I say, it's again, you can level the adjust a bit. I'll start again. You can level the adjust the level that you're at. What is going on with me today? You can adjust the level of brake regen that you've got in that mode, but as I say, if you rely on the pedal, just be aware of that. So, what are we left with? Well, we're left with a car that actually is quite a surprise. I think, it drives a lot better than, dare I suggest, you expect it is going to in some reason. You walk up to it and see the physicality of the car, the size of it, the type of car that it is. You go, oh, it's not going to be that great when it comes to hustling down bends. And in some respects, it's not when it comes to the actual outright performance of it. But the chassis balance, the way the car behaves through the bends, the way that, as I say, this Cupra mode, once you're on this open road, I'm still in Cupra mode, the ride quality is really good. It's only just at low speed round about town or on a really heavily rutted road when you're in that Cupra mode, you just feel that firmness. The flip side, when you're in the comfort mode, it eliminates that, but on more open roads where there's those bigger undulations, the car and the chassis don't quite match up to one another, so you tend to get this more of a porpoising motion. So get it in the Cupra mode, get the body control firmed up, just put up with that slightly firmer ride, and what you're left with is a really, really good car. This is a really excellent car. And actually, you then forget about the fact that it's not neck-snappingly fast on its acceleration, because it flows between the bends that little bit better. So your actual point-to-point speed is all right. This is quite a surprise, and a good surprise. This is a good car. I'm really impressed with this. So how much, Brian? I can hear you all say it now. How much is all this going to cost us? Okay, it's not an inexpensive car, the Tavascan, in fairness. You know, you don't have a low starting price on them with a smaller battery. It is that 77 kilowatt hour one, and that's your lot. So your range starts with the V1 specification, and that's £47,340, okay? So as I say, it's not inexpensive to start with, okay? You move up to this V2, and in fairness, it does add an awful lot of extra standard equipment onto the car. The panoramic glass roof, the dynamic chassis control, heated front seats, the 21-inch alloys, other little bits and pieces. And that means you need to find £53,835 if you want this one. And this is, let's say, the only standard paint finish, this Atacama Desert, but this is the colour you should have. No other colours as far as I'm concerned. If you want a dual motor car, then you can go into the VZ1, okay? So the same spec as the V1, but with dual motors. And that's going to cost you a little bit more, and that's £55,935, okay? But if you want the VZ2, so this spec, dual motor, more power, then you need to part with quite a bit more, £60,835. And remember, you've got to add on the winter pack to that if you want the heat pump, okay? So, and as I say, that's a £1,330 option, so just be aware of that. However, one of the things I will credit Cupra with is you do get a 5-year warranty with the car, which I think is exceptional, and you don't get anything like that from any of the other Volkswagen Group brands. So 5-year warranty with the car, and residuals on Cupras seem to stay quite high. So overall running costs, leasing costs, it could be quite competitive despite that slightly higher starting price. Right, competition. Well, let's be honest, any road test review I've done recently with one of these style of cars, you can just pretty much copy and paste what I've said about the competition in for this car. Coupe style SUVs, yep, there's plenty of them out there. So let's start with the Volkswagen Group cars, the MEB platform cars that you might also consider. Volkswagen ID.5. The Škoda Enyaq Coupe. Now the Škoda Enyaq had a big facelift, obviously at the end of 2024. I'm going to be driving the new car in a couple of weeks' time, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel if you want to see what my thoughts are on the newly revised Enyaq, but that's a consideration as well. Of course, there's Audi's Q4 e-tron. That has to be considered too, and although it's not a Volkswagen, of course there's the Ford Capri, because that is built on the MEB platform. But you do know my thoughts on that car. And in fairness, that was the dual motor car, you know, £60,000, you know, which this car is at £60,000 with the dual motor as well. So it is a very competitive car, but I think this one's a bit more clearly defined, and dare I suggest, I just think it's a better car. Anyway, that's by the by. What else are you going to maybe consider? So that's your MEB cars. What else are you going to consider? Well, maybe you might also consider Hyundai Group cars. So the Kia EV6, brilliant car. Again, end of 2024, had a big revision, big facelift. And still at the top of the list, I think, you know, in terms of a driver's car in this sort of market sector. I think that's a really good car. Still very competitive, good battery, good efficiency, good warranty. It's a Kia. Good car. Hyundai Ioniq 5, bit more standard. In fact, it just looks like a big hatchback. It's not really a coupe style, but it's certainly worthy of a consideration. If you're going premium, remember they've also got Genesis, which means the GV60. That's a car that you might consider instead of this one as well. Talking of premium badges, what about BMW with the iX2? I ran one as a long-termer, 6 months in the car, 3,000 miles. Not exactly a looker, but a really good car to drive. That could be a consideration at this price point as well, so don't forget that one. Volvo, they're there as well with the EC40, which is the coupe version of the EX40. That had a big revision, a new facelift and stuff, so that could also be a consideration for you as well. Not quite as big in the back, that's the only downside with the Volvo. It's not quite as roomy, not quite as practical a car, but stylish, well built, it's a Volvo, and actually quite a decent car to drive. We'll come back to Europe and we'll start talking about things such as the Stellantis group offerings. There is only really one in some respects, which is the Peugeot, and that's the E3008. That's a car, you know, again, really stylish looking, great interior, a bit like the Cupra, I think. Really brilliant interior in the E3008. Wasn't so fussed about the way it drove, in fairness, but Peugeot's a popular brand and it certainly has to be considered. So, my point is, there's actually quite a lot of cars out there when you really start to look, and there's a lot to be considered for your money. So here's what we like, and also what we don't like about Cupra's new Tavascan. Well, we like its design. It's very spacious. We love the design and the use of materials on the interior. Cupra's focus on sustainability is a big plus point for us. And overall, it's a better car to drive than you might at first think. We don't like, well, it's not inexpensive in any of its trim levels. To us, the brakes just feel a little bit odd. There's no doubt that it can feel heavy when pushing on. And in this single motor, guys, perhaps it lacks a little performance for something wearing the Cupra badge. You might think in the electric car world, but all this platform sharing between brands and manufacturers can't make any real distinction. You know, after all, how different can an ID.5 be to a Ford Capri, to a Cupra Tavascan, to a Škoda Enyaq? Well, trust me, they do drive very, very differently. And I will say this, that as far as I'm concerned, until I drive the new Škoda Enyaq in a couple of weeks' time, I'm quite happy to stand here and tell you that I think the Tavascan is the best SUV that sits on the MEB platform. It has a character that Cupra as a brand have been sort of like defining for themselves over the last 7 years as a standalone manufacturer. And with this car, they've really made that very evident. This is a very different car to an ID.5 or a Ford Capri or an Audi Q4 e-tron. It is its own distinct car. Yes, it does maybe lack a little bit of the spark that you might think comes from having the Cupra badge. So if you are after a performance car, maybe it does fall a little bit short. But if you're after a family car with some character, then the new Cupra Tavascan hits the nail very much on the head. In other words, the wait really has been worth it. Thank you for watching another road test review on AutoEV. As always, please make sure you are subscribed to the AutoEV channel. And once you've done that, make sure you then press the little bell button that's down below, because that's the way you'll be notified when the next video is uploaded and it's gone live. If you have enjoyed this week's review, and I hope you have, give it a little thumbs up, and don't forget, leave us your thoughts in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think of Cupra's new Tavascan. Would you spend the money on this instead of, say, an Audi Q4 e-tron or a BMW iX2? Or a Volkswagen ID.5. Have you? Have you bought one? Why did you buy it? Let us know in the comment section down below. Now remember, we're also across on all social media platforms, so if you're into your Facebook, your X, your Instagram, your TikTok, your LinkedIn, we're there too, so please give us a follow there, because that certainly helps the channel. And maybe if you're in the marketplace to buy an electric car, might not be a new Cupra Tavascan, maybe you're thinking about maybe a second-hand Cupra Born. Great value for money, family hatchback, Cupra. But you need to know a bit more detail about it. How do you find out? Well, stay on the AutoEV YouTube channel. On the homepage, you'll just at the top there, you'll see a little magnifying glass. And if you type the name of the car you're interested in there, then you'll find out by the road test that actual car buyers trust when it comes to choosing their next electric car. And that, folks, is the AutoEV one. Thanks again for watching. Thank you for your continued support. I'll see you again soon.